Welcome to the front row. I'm your host, Brad Rowe, and this is a space where unfiltered stories of the human condition get told. Pull up a chair. So we ended last episode where I walked away from everything in a van, but we kind of have to go back a little bit to just after the divorce to talk about the arc of this episode here, which is me searching for healing. Like I said, I was in the lowest, darkest place in my life at the end of June, professionally on top of the world. But that divorce cracked open all of my wounds, all of my traumas. So it wasn't just the weight of that single moment. It was the weight of everything that I'd avoided my entire life coming crashing down on me right there. My energy was terrible. You know, I had nothing to give to clients. There was this moment, people ask me all the time, what was Mike Tyson like? And I just remember this moment shortly after the divorce. Mike was filming for Shark Week, and he invited me along to go to the Bahamas with him to continue his training because, you know, he was getting ready for the Roy Jones Jr. fight the day before Thanksgiving. So we fly private jet to the Bahamas. We're in this beautiful villa with private chefs, everything. And I'm just broken, just don't even want to live. And there was this one moment where I'm on the couch at night, sitting with Mike and his wife, and I just break down, cry my eyes out. And Mike and his wife have their arms around me, and they're crying and consoling me. So if you want to know what kind of guy Mike is, like, that is probably one of my favorite core memories of working with Mike, just to show the heart that he had, but also to show you how broken I was, because here I was crying my eyes out in the arms of the baddest man on the planet. One of my clients, him and his wife are some of the biggest leaders in plant medicine in the world. His wife and her ex-husband founded Rhythmia in Costa Rica, which is considered probably the number one ayahuasca retreat. And they had become like close friends to me at that point. And they saw the pain that I was going through. So they suggested that I walk down this path of trying the medicine to help me heal. I'd already started diving into personal development. You know, like I said, when the divorce happened, I had two options: just keep burying shit and moving forward, or try to find the best version of myself, try to actually love myself. So I started with breathwork and meditation, started reading all these different personal development books. And, you know, they were helping a little bit here and there, but they weren't really making that big of an impact. So my friend suggested that I sit with Aya, and it was just one of those things of like, you don't just jump right into it. You know, you wait for the timing right to be called to it. The medicine calls you to it. So one of the first things they did was they introduced me to this healer that they worked with in Malibu, one of their friends. And so she wanted to do a cacao ceremony with me. And I go to this woman's house, drink a cup of cacao, and she does all this work on me, trying to move energy, trying to open my heart and soften my heart. And at the end of it, she tells me, I have some homework for you. I want you to take these mushrooms. So she hands me a handful of mushrooms. She's like, go to a place that brings you joy, a place that brought little Brad joy. As a kid growing up, I grew up in a beach community. My mom's favorite thing to do was go to the beach on her days off during the summer. And so my best friend and his mom, who was my mom's best friend at the time, and a few of our other friends and their moms would spend every opportunity at the beach. So I was like, perfect. I'll take these and I'll go to the beach and just see what happens. So I leave her, I go back to my house, take care of my dog, grab my beach stuff, And I figured I would head to Marina Del Rey Beach, which is kind of quiet. So as she told me it would take about like 30 to 45 minutes for the mushrooms to kick in. So I'm on my way there. I'm about 10 minutes out. I decide to eat the mushrooms then. As I get close to the beach, there's no parking anywhere. So I'm driving frantically up and down all these little side streets to try to find parking because it is an absolute beautiful summer day. Can't find anything. So then I start heading north and I'm passing through Venice Beach. And then I start feeling some stuff coming on. Now, mind you, I've never done psychedelics before. I've never touched anything like that. So I have no idea what I'm about to experience. And as soon as I get to the heart of Venice Beach, I'm like, I got to park. So I find one of those paid parking places, park there, take my chair, get down to the beach, plop myself in the sand, and off we go. And if any of you have ever done mushrooms or other psychedelics, all of your senses are extremely heightened. So here I am on Venice Beach, which is a circus, homeless people, like sidewalk acts, like everything. It is an absolute circus down there. And it just so happened to be this extremely busy day, the beginning of August. So as the medicine's kicking in, my anxiety is through the roof because all I can hear is people talking everywhere, different languages, people playing paddleball, music blasting. It was just sensory overload. And I am just losing my mind, anxious as hell, but I cannot leave because I can't operate. I don't even know how much she gave me, like probably like 2 grams, maybe, if I were to think back now. So 2.5 hours goes by of me just riding out this miserable experience. And I remember she wanted me to journal and I was journaling. I was like, yeah, she told me to go to like Brad's Happy Place, and Brad's Happy Place on his private, quiet little beach in Seaburg, New Hampshire with his best friend, not hundreds of thousands of people blaring music and partying and dancing. And so that was my first experience on the healing medicine, and it was a complete backfire. So I tell my friend about it, and he's like, no, man, like you have to go someplace quiet and secluded. It's all about set and setting. So he gives me some more mushrooms, and he's like, come to my house, park there. He lived up in Malibu right next to the beach. He's like, just walk down to the beach and go there. So a couple days later, I finally took him up on that, and I went and parked at his house and sat down with the mushrooms and had some intentions going into it, and had this really heart-opening, beautiful experience. Like it took a lot of like that sharp pain that I was feeling away. So again, a couple opportunities for me to sit with the medicine had kind of come, and things didn't work out properly. And then finally at the end of August, they had set something up because my buddy's brother was really going through some hard times. So they flew in these healers from Brazil. They're part of this church called the Santo Daime. And the Santo Daime is actually a Christ-based church that uses ayahuasca as part of their services. So here I am walking into this experience, which I thought was completely nuts to begin with. When I first started hanging out with my buddy and kind of his inner circle, and I start hearing how they're talking about love and light and all this stuff. And they got married at the beginning of June. And me and my ex-wife had gone to their wedding, and all of their circle was there. And it was just the wildest experience. And I was like, who are these crazy people? I'm like, this is stupid. Like, what is this drug? Like, thinking it's all crazy. But here I was, just completely broken and open to anything, to taking away that pain. So we sit down, and the part of the ceremony is it's a very religious ceremony. The servers, the healers, the facilitators, they had, all these photos of Jesus and photos of this guy who's the founder of their church, and kind of told the story about how God gave him the medicine and showed him how that it can help heal, and this whole story behind him coming up with these songs when he was in the jungle, going through all this. And so here we are singing these songs that this guy created, and a lot of them are about Jesus. And mind you, I'm an atheist walking into this. Like, I have no belief system in God whatsoever, but I was like, all right, whatever. Let me just go through the motions here. My buddy knows that I handle, alcohol and drugs. I'm a fast metabolizer. So he's like, I really think you should take a little extra because, you're such a bigger guy and you metabolize things fast. I'm like, okay. So we're sitting there and I don't feel anything for a while. And then it just hits me, and it hits hard. I felt like I had to purge after I was like sitting there at the table for a little bit. And he was like, just go outside, go get some air. And as I step outside, I just start purging, and like I am vomiting so hard that I literally think I'm going to die because I can't even catch my breath. It is just like I swear to God, I puked my toenails out. Like that's how hard and how heavy that I was purging. It was just all this darkness leaving me. I was like, I overdosed. Like he had me take too much. I overdosed. I'm going to die. Like these are the thoughts going through my head as well. And finally the purging stops. And I just get overwhelmed with this feeling of love. Like all this darkness and all this pain had just left me. And I had never felt such a loving experience in my life. And during that time, I was taken into this realm and into this space in these elves, pretty much the best way I could describe it. They told me that I was now one of God's warriors. And it wasn't that, I'm here to fight people. I'm here to be a warrior in the spiritual battle. And that God put me on earth to help people, to help carry their pains and their burdens because they can't handle it. And that's what I was built for. Remember that. That was the first time that purpose was put into me, that I was here to really help others. So I go inside and I lay down, and the rest of the night was just me laying there with just so much love going through my body and so much gratitude and an understanding of God. I met God there. Like I understood God, little g, God, from a spiritual standpoint, but it cracked my heart open. And from there, I was like, I'm all in. Let's go. And same old Brad, just full steam ahead. I dove down this path of the next couple of years of sitting in the medicine consistently, going to these different retreats. They had set me up with one of their other facilitators they'd worked with forever. She was actually the lead facilitator at Rhythmia for a long time. So I followed her to a couple different retreats, at her place in New Mexico and in California, brought some friends along with me who had been going through some challenges. And each time with the medicine, I broke open more and I learned more and I became more loving and I became more empathetic. And in between that time, as I said, I was so blessed because I was still under contract with my investors. They were still paying me, a nice consulting fee. I had a handful of, my high-end clients. So I was able to really dive in on the personal development side of things. I would get in my little sauna in my house every single morning, do breath work, do meditation, get in my hyperbaric chamber, read these personal development books, going to these retreats, doing the medicine. And I saw consistent change. I was microdosing mushrooms, which really helped a ton, especially just on that day-to-day basis of just taking away that heaviness. As I explain to people, on a microdose, you don't really feel anything. Just all of a sudden, after a couple of days, you're like, everything feels a little lighter. So through that path, I start to see God more. I start to understand God more. I start to love myself more. But some of those experiences are dark. They're painful. They're bringing up stuff. And the way I explain it to people is it's tearing down those walls. It's tearing down that veil those lies that you've created. And it helps you kind of track back to some of those moments that you felt so much pain in your life, and be able to face yourself there and be able to love yourself there. And that's when a lot of the realization of where this trauma came from in my life. Moments of, like I said, this one moment, I remember I was in this field. It's like 4 a.m. and this, one of the facilitators is walking with me. And I literally went back to that moment of when my dad's boyfriend at the time told me that I was lazy and I was never going to amount to anything, and how that was one of the biggest triggers for me of making my identity around being the hardest working person that I could be. And so be able to work through those things. And some of these experiences, like I said, they were painful, like having visions of my ex and the guy that she was with, and having to process that type of stuff. And like I'm laying there in this hammock in this beautiful place, and all these visions are coming up as I'm trying to fall asleep. And I'm just like, but like, it makes you face it, makes you work through it. And I said the path, it brought such a shift in my life. I also probably overdid it. I ended up in a 2-year span or so sitting with ayahuasca 13 times, San Pedro probably 7 or 8 times, probably about 20 plus mushroom ceremonies. And again, these are great modalities, but it's not just doing the medicine itself. There has to be an integration phase. And so you have to take that work and carry it out. And so there were a couple times where I went away on a retreat, and, you really should come back to a place where your nervous system's settled and you can really kind of sit through and process things. And then here I go, dive right into traveling all over the country for clients and dealing with all these high stress situations. And so no matter what I learned through those things, it was kind of hard for me to apply and process them sometimes. So looking back, not saying I wouldn't go down that path, I just probably would have approached it a little differently. And, with medicine, there's all these different things that happen. Not every time was this hallucinogenic state. Not every time was this crazy thing. And for me, a lot of them were kind of what they call null experiences, where really nothing happens, but that's where a lot of breakthroughs happen too. This one time I was in New Mexico and, going through one of the experiences and nothing's happening. I'm getting so frustrated. And next thing I know, I start smashing my head off the wall because I'm so pissed that, I'd spent this time and money to do this and nothing's happening. And then that was a reminder to me of, I mentioned before, like how I used to process my pain, my emotional pain was whenever I dealt with emotional pain, I would inflict physical pain on myself to transmute that. And so even though nothing was happening, it was this eye-opening experience, like, oh, wow, that's a pattern that you've continuously done, and teaching me, how to name those emotions and how to name, what I'm facing. Another experience where, again, a null experience where every time my mind shifted to something else, I would like puke in my mouth a little bit. And it was God being like, I need you present. I need you here. Stop letting your mind race and wander in all these different places, because my mind just goes and goes and goes. It races everywhere. And then I got introduced to the toad, 5-MeO, which is what they call the God molecule. So I went down to visit a buddy in Arizona, and first time we met, and he's like, we're going to skydive. We're going to do the toad. We're going to do all these things. He's like, are you in? I'm like, let's go. So my first experience with the toad, it's a lesson in surrender. And so the level of your ability to surrender is the level of the experience that you go through, at least from my experience with it. It's a short experience, 15, 20 minutes. So I go to this guy's house and I'm up first. You smoke it through this pipe. And all of a sudden I just go through just this crazy, like painful experience. I don't remember a lot of the beginning of the journey, but I just remember being like on my hands and knees and feeling something around my throat, like strangling me. And I knew it was about surrender. And so I just had to lean into this. And it was literally like whatever was wrapped around my neck, I had to lean into it tighter to choke myself and kill myself. So every experience you could imagine, emotionally and physically, of being choked to death, I had to go through. And it was just this like capitulating experience into surrender. And then all of a sudden, you die. And literally, my soul left my body dropped to the ground. And in that moment was just the most beautiful, blissful, peaceful experience imaginable. And then immediately just drop back into my body and come back alive. And I was like in the fetal position, drooling on my face, crying. It was the most intense, painful, and beautiful experience in the world. And it kind of showed me that that's heaven. That's what you get to look forward to in the afterlife. It's just like pure bliss, pure paradise. I didn't see any people, didn't see anything. It was just an absolute peace. So I go back and visit my friend a few weeks later, and he's like, "Oh, we're going to do it again." I'm like, okay. So I walk in and I'm up first. I go through my first experience and I was able to surrender a little more peaceful. It was still pretty intense, but a little more peaceful. As soon as I come up, I get a pipe put in my mouth again. The guy's like, "I didn't tell you, but you're going to do it 6 times in a row." I'm like, wow, here we go. Second time, I surrender. Third time, I don't surrender. Right when you're about to let go, I start breathing and I pull myself out of it. And in my mind, I just quit on myself. I just gave up on myself. And it's someone who prides themselves on being hardworking, being disciplined, enduring anything. I just fucking failed myself. And that put me down a hole. And he's like, "You're up again. Go. 4th time. Don't surrender." I'm about to lose my shit. 5th time. Don't surrender. I get up, flip the couch, like go in, smash my head off a wall, just so upset with myself that I gave up on myself, that I quit on myself. And he's like, "All right, we're done. We're done. We'll do this another time." Well, that created this experience, this PTSD experience, where when I would go to fall asleep, it was like the medicine was reactivating. When I would meditate, it was like the medicine reactivating, and it kind of created this crazy PTSD response to it. So at the end of that, as I mentioned in the last episode, I had met this woman who was a spiritual medium, and she told me, she was like, "I think you're supposed to be done with the medicine, you know." But I'd already signed up for this ayahuasca retreat a few weeks later. And I was actually really nervous about going to that ayahuasca retreat. And really the only reason why I signed up for it was because I wanted, it's the same facilitators. I wanted them to see who I'd become, the change that they had helped facilitate in my life. And it wasn't even about going to do the medicine. I just wanted to go, thank them and show them to how much help they brought me through. So I was really nervous about the first night, the ayahuasca night. And before I went to bed that night, the night before we were served the medicine, one of my childhood best friend's mother sent me a DM on Facebook that said, "Brad, remember your childhood. Come back to your roots. Come back to your roots. you, Josh, Justin, running down the streets. Life was so good. Come back to your roots. Like a cryptic message. I haven't spoken to this woman in 30 years, 30 plus years. And it was at like 3:00 in the morning, East Coast time. And so it was just confusing. Didn't understand it. Ayahuasca night was fine. And then we go on to San Pedro, which was one of my favorite medicines because it just makes you very present. It's kind of you do it during the day. You immerse yourself in nature. Conversations are just so meaningful, and the sun had never felt so tantalizing, and the wind so refreshing, and colors are just so vibrant. And so I'm having this beautiful day, and then I go around this fire, and all these women are talking about losing their identity, when they get older and they're not as beautiful. And I'm like, all right, I'm kind of out of place here. So let me leave and go inside. I go inside and I sit down and I'm just hanging out with people. And all of a sudden I felt the experience from the toad kick in. And I lay down and I went through this experience where I literally had to hemorrhage myself to death. Literally just like, and kill myself by doing that. And right when I was about to surrender, I pulled myself out of it. During that, I shit myself, pissed myself, puked all over myself. I broke every blood vessel in my face, my eyes, my chest, everywhere. I go to the bathroom. I had people go get me new clothes, and I look in the mirror, and I had never seen myself so ugly before. Now, mind you, my entire life was built on my identity at that point, on my looks, on everything. I'm a magazine cover model, and it was like that conversation that happened earlier was meant for me. So I get cleaned up. I go into the yurt. We were going to have a little prayer session before we got food. And as I'm walking to the yurt, this voice in me says, you have to go through this. You have to experience this again. And it's going to be 100 times more painful. And everyone has to watch because there was only a handful of people there. And there was like 20 people that day. So I tell one of the facilitators, and he was like, all right, well, let me go inside and talk to everybody to make sure everybody's, feels safe to witness it. Because they saw like how much pain I went through. So they're like, all right, everybody's here to hold space for you. So I go and I lay down in the middle of the circle with 20 something people surrounding me. The anxiety of the pain that I was about to go through was so overwhelming. I dropped to my knees and I was crying like a baby. Like, I don't want to go through this. I don't want to do this. I had never experienced something more painful in my life. And this voice in my head whispered that I had to go through this and it was going to be way more painful. And I'm like, kept pulling myself out of it. And I asked him, like, do I have to do this? He's like, no, but the only way through is through. If you really want to heal, you really want to surrender. And so I keep laying down. They have boards. They're like trying to strap me down. Like it's just like some type of exorcism. And I'm just like, I keep stopping, keep it up, keep crying, like just broken of like, I don't think I can bear this. And then he was like, why do you have to surrender to pain? Why does it always have to be pain? Why can't you just surrender to love? Why don't you open your heart to love? And sure enough, I shifted my perspective and I went through this experience and it was just more of a loving, inviting experience. And I was able to surrender through it. So that was just a story I had to share because that was wild. But I also met God. Like I said, I met God through all of this. And I know, there's a lot of negative outlooks on the medicine and I've seen nothing but mostly positive experiences through my own experience and people have been through it. And I was at this other retreat and this is when I finally believed in God, like big G God. I was on San Pedro, but a different experience. And I was laying out on this huge rock in Temecula, looking over these beautiful mountains and wine country. And I hear one of the facilitators, she was doing a sound bath on the inside, and something just called me to go in there. So I'm literally in my underwear laying on this rock, because like you want to take your clothes off and just lay, like, ground and lay in nature. So I get dressed, I go inside, I lay down. All these women are in there listening to the sound bath. And the woman starts singing this song. It's about Jesus, and she was singing about Jesus. And as I'm laying there, this God just came to me, this energetic figure, and says, Brad, your undenying belief in yourself was belief in me, because I created you as you are. And my whole life, I didn't think I needed God. I thought God was a fairy tale. The weak people that needed answers, I needed healing. I felt like I had everything inside of me to get through life. And that's why I rejected God. I rejected Christ. And at that moment, it was like, you are real. You are real. You made me. And I just broke down. The happiest, most joyful tears ever. And all these women came and hugged me and held me. And so that's when I really knew God through all this. I didn't know Christ, but I knew God. So all around this is the same time that everything started falling apart. And I got that vision of getting in the van. So my friend, who was the spiritual healer, I told her my plan. And she said, the van life, that's great. Go travel the country, go see this country. But Costa Rica is where the real healing is going to happen. She's like, that's where you're going to find God. Well, my plan was actually to go to like Thailand and a couple other countries, maybe backpack through Europe. But she's like, I hear Costa Rica. She's like, go get a reading from someone that does astrocartography. So I end up finding this woman who does astrocartography, and she gives me a reading. And basically there's these energetic lines in your life and if you're near some of these lines, they either are beneficial in certain ways or they're detrimental in certain ways. So there's these two lines, one called Chiron, which is the wounded healer. And then this other, like, very positive, professional, spiritual line, lifeline. Both of them pass right through where I was born. And then both of them pass right through the area in Costa Rica that I was considering going to. And so I was like, all right, that's it. Costa Rica. That's what I'm going to do. So van life for 8 months, go disappear in the jungle for Costa Rica, just submit myself to God. No cell phone, no Wi-Fi, just a cheap little flip phone, and just truly try to disconnect. And I don't care if it took 6 months, a year, 2 years. I was fortunate to have the funds where I could support all this and just disappear. So finally, the end of November 23, I take off. And at that point, like I said, my friend, the healer, she told me, the medium, she was like, no more medicine work. Just, this is about you finding God and integrating everything. Like, you've done enough. Like, you know how to do everything from here, and God will lead you. So I had a 1-month contract with a client in December in Miami. Went there, drove the van from LA to Miami, did my month contract. The day before Christmas, drove up to New Hampshire. So my plan when I got to New Hampshire was just to be there for like 6 or 8 weeks. But when I bought the van, my crazy ass, I spent months researching, like looking at all these different vans. I bought it sight unseen. The guy had built 3 different vans before, but this van had all the off-road capabilities, all the systems, solar, power, water filtration systems, everything. I mean, this was a badass battle rig. The interior the layout was kind of more what I was looking for. And he'd sent me a bunch of photos and videos. but you don't really see the details. So when I flew out to Vegas to meet him, he was driving in from Utah, and that's kind of where we met up. I finally saw the thing. And I get inside and I see all these gaps where trim is, and I see where cabinets and drawers should be. They're just kind of open spaces. And I'm like, I was a builder when I was younger and worked on some really high end stuff and did finish work. And so I was like, you know what? This would be a good little project for me to do when I get home. I can have one of my friends help me and just tear this thing apart and rebuild it. So I get home to New Hampshire. What I thought was going to be maybe a 8-week project max. And then I would get on the road and kind of do I bought an Icon pass. So I want to do this big snowboarding trip before I started hitting some of the national parks. Well, that project took 5 months. It was so much harder than I thought it was going to be. The whole van is built out of 80/20 aluminum. And so it's all these little tiny nuts and bolts. And it's basically like an adult erector set. And you have to have such precise measurement. It's not like wood where if anything's off a little bit, you can, shave it down or throw some filler in there. My buddy that was helping me was going through a really hard time in his life. And so his life was chaos. So it was a project. Finally get in the van. It's the end of June. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to go up to Acadia National Park and do a little mini trip, make sure everything's running right, and then I'll take off. Well, I get up to Acadia and the house air conditioner doesn't work. So, in a van, you have the normal van air conditioning unit, and then there's an additional air conditioning unit in the back. That breaks. And it just so happens that there is a massive heat wave, and there's 100-degree days in Bar Harbor, Maine, which is unheard of. And I talk about signs. There's been a lot of signs in my life, always. So the morning I was getting ready to leave, my buddy was letting me stay at one of his beach rentals the entire time I was home. He owns a ton of rentals, and it was off season. So he had this beautiful place right on the beach open for me. So I was there for those 5 months. And every morning me and Francis would go for a walk on the beach, rain, sleet, snow. We didn't care. That morning I went for a walk. And as I came back, someone stole my fucking sneakers. I'm like, what the hell? Again, signs from God. So I'm up in Maine. I can't hike because it's way too hot for Francis. I mean, I could bear it, but he's a black dog. He's going to die. Can't leave him in the van because it's just way too hot in there. Can't leave the van running, with the air conditioner on because that will, it's a diesel motor that would kill the motor. So I go to Home Depot and buy a portable AC, and I go to a campsite and just plug in. And I had to spend my whole days just chilling there with the air conditioner running. And then I would try to take advantage of like early morning hikes and late evening hikes. So I get back, and I'm on my way back. There was this woman that married one of my childhood friends. And she saw my story, and she's like, she's a medium as well. She's like, I didn't want to say anything, but you weren't supposed to leave. You're supposed to stay here and work on something. She's like, you're supposed to work on your relationship with your mother. I don't know what's going on. I don't even know you guys' relationship, but I'm being told you need to work on your relationship with your mother. And me and my mother's relationship had become fractured at that point. Everything I talked about in the previous episodes of my childhood, I still love my mother. We had an amazing relationship. She was my best friend. We talked every single day. But when I went through my healing journey, my armor fell off. That armor of like continuously ready to fight and attack each other, that was gone. And my heart opened up and my heart gotten softer. But my mom didn't change. And so conversations become argumentative in a way. My mother's very opinionated and it just feels like everything is just a little jab. And so our relationship became very difficult. And I knew that, all right, like here's an opportunity for me to really try to lean in on that and work on that, because it was hard when I was home. Like that whole time, those 5 months I was home, I would set things up where I would get Amazon packages delivered to her house. So it was like, and I would set up a client after, because I was just training a couple of my buddies just to, make a couple $100 here and there, to food money or whatever. And so I would go to my mom's house, hang out for like 5 or 10 minutes, like, oh, I got to go, so I didn't put a lot of time in there to really deal with that. So I was like, all right, it's summertime. It's too hot to really travel in the van anyway. I was around a lot of my friends that I grew up with, who I was really close with. And some of these guys are older. They weren't really guys that I went to college with. I mean, I went to high school or grew up with, but they were people that I met later in life who just become really great friends. And made me realize how much I missed community. I didn't have community in LA, and that was partly my fault because I shut everybody out. Because if you weren't making me the best bodybuilder or you weren't making me money, I had no time for you. So going back there and being around friends every day, and one of my best friends owns a bunch of bars, and so I didn't drink, but like every Friday, Saturday night, we'd go get dinners, we'd go hang out at the bar, just always doing stuff. And that was something that I didn't have in my life for a long time. So like, this is perfect. Summertime is the best time there. It's a big tourist community. And I thought it was going to be amazing. Well, that woman, the medium, I told her, I was like, I would love to stay, but unfortunately I don't have a place to live. My friend that has all the rentals, it's his prime season. The place he was letting me stay in, it was like $6,000 a week he gets for it. So I can't be living there. And she's like, well, we have an in-law apartment at our house. She's like, you actually built it when you were in high school. And so her husband, my childhood friend, he bought his parents' house. And when I was in high school and I was working for my uncle, we built that garage and built the apartment there. And I was like, what a full circle moment. So I go there. We end up having this crazy hot, humid summer. The apartment had no insulation. I had 4 air conditioners going, couldn't keep it cool. My friends were all super busy. One of them was traveling a ton. The other one, has 7 different bars and restaurants. And so he was never around, and relationship, my mom and me didn't get any better. And so what I thought was going to be this fun summer was hard. It was hard because I was also dealing with, what am I doing with my life? Like money's starting to go. I'm wasting all this time. I feel like I'm not moving forward with my healing. My binge eating and bulimia really took off. It got worse. It was a challenge. And then finally, I think it was, I ended up meeting a girl. So like, through this whole time, I hadn't really dated. That was one of the things that I focused on. When the divorce happened, most people just connect with someone right away to fill that void. And I was like, no, like, avoid that. Become who you need to be to carry in a relationship. Love yourself, learn how to love yourself first. So during that whole span, I had dated, it was like 2 years after the divorce before I even opened myself to dating someone. I dated one girl for like a month and a half. She was sweet, but she was just young. Dated another girl for 2 months, and, there was good connection, but, this is like 6 months later than her. But it was just obvious that she wasn't in a place that she really wanted to move forward. And I'm like, this is empty. Like, yeah, I could still hang out with this hot girl and have sex and, just enjoy myself. But that wasn't what I was looking for. I wanted a partner. And outside of those two, I hadn't talked to anybody or anything. And so I met this girl in yoga, and she was completely different than any type of person I would ever pursue. Finally, one of the few girls I actually asked her out, and we hit it off right away. Just deep connection spiritually. She had been through a lot of things in her life. She had battled anorexia for a lot of her life. She had been molested herself and been sexually assaulted as an adult. And so it wasn't really trauma bonding as much as we just understood each other, and we could just talk forever and laugh. And we both were committed to abstinence, about just really creating connection, and everything was going great. But she was also one of those people that she still allowed her trauma to identify herself and allowed her to control her life, and was just very explosive. And I was just, this healer in me was like, all right, just be that stable, grounded man in her life, and she'll be able to heal and move through this. Well, you can't heal someone. You can't fix someone. So things were going good until they weren't. And then she started making me feel like I was crazy. And finally, it just hit a point that I was like, you know what? I'm going to go. Because she was very hesitant to really get in a relationship anyway, because she knew that she had so much work to do. And I just kind of like, oh, we can work through these things together. But she also brought up something very powerful one night. We're in bed and she's laying on top of me and just looking in my eyes. And she's like, I have to say this to you, that you're never going to be able to get into a fully loving relationship until you overcome your eating disorder, because you're never going to be able to be present. And at that moment, here I am with this beautiful woman laying on top of me, looking me in the eyes, and all I can think about is what I'm going to eat before I go to bed. That was like a major wake-up call of like, okay, this is the battle. This is the biggest battle that I have to overcome. Whatever it is that trauma that I still haven't released is what I need to focus on. And so that was if anything, that came out of that whole relationship, that was just such a wake-up call of like, you're not ready. You're not ready for a relationship because you still haven't overcome this. Like I said, during that whole experience, there were, I kept being tested with opportunities. And I said, I had this wellness center that I wanted to open, and I had a big investment opportunity from one of my old clients. She was like, hey, right when I was leaving LA, she was like, I believe in you and I want to invest in you. So why don't we sign contracts? You go on your little journey, and when you come back, let's do this. And I just knew right away, I was like, that's not surrender. I can't, as great as that sounds, like, I just can't do this. That's not surrendering. So I passed up that opportunity. And then an opportunity came about for me to do something with a guy in Miami. And this property came up. It was a perfect location right in Wynwood. If you know Wynwood, like you can't even get near that place now. And again, it was one of those things of, man, like, that's great, but let's say I go to Miami. I don't want to live in Miami. I know that. I was just there for a month, and yeah, it's cool to go visit, but that's not a place I want to live. And the guy's like, well, we build the place out, 18 months, proof of concept, then we can open up in any other place you want. And I'm like, yeah, but what if that 18 months turns into 6 years? Then I'm tied to this thing, and it's not where I want to be. Even though it's what I want to do, it's not where I want to be. And so it just didn't feel right. And my buddy from New Hampshire that owned all the bars and restaurants and everything, he's like, I love this concept. All I do is get people drunk. Let me do something to help the community and get them healthy. He's like, I have this property here, prime location. He's like, I'll fund it for you, whatever you need, salary wise. Let's do this. And I just knew I just didn't want to be in New Hampshire. And I was like, I'll step on as a consultant, but this isn't where I want to be. This isn't where I'm called to be. Like I said, I just knew there was more for me. I just didn't know what it was. And then another opportunity that I pass up. Mike Tyson's wife reaches out to me. She's like, hey, I just came across your Instagram profile. I am just blown away by your journey. We are so happy for you. Mike is getting ready for the Jake Paul fight. We would love for you to come to Vegas to get Mike ready for that. What do you think? That's an opportunity that, again, people would kill for. But it just didn't sit right. I was like, Kiki, I'm like, let me sit on this. I'm like, I told her my journey, where I needed to go, and what I felt like I was being called to do. And she's like, I understand. She's like, if you can, think about it and just let us know. And so I put a lot of thought into it. I was like, man, I'm like, that's delaying 4 months of this journey, delaying 4 months of this trip. That's me turning back to ego, and everybody's like, oh man, just go back and do it. Really focus on trying to get marketing out of it this time. And it will help build what you want to build. And I'm like, just something about it. It was like, that's ego, like what does that do for me in like the personal development space? And in the back of my mind was, if I can be around Mike and help him with his journey, like I said, Mike's an amazing man, but Mike has his battles. Mike has his demons. And it was, so in my mind, it was like, well, maybe if I can be kind of a rock and a guide for Mike to help him deal with some of his stuff, like that's what I would focus on more, not about just getting in shape and getting ready for a fight. But it just didn't feel right. So I ended up passing up that opportunity. And finally, things with the girl went crazy. And I was like, I got to get in the van. It's beginning of October. So I took off heading west. And my plan was to try to get through a couple of the national parks and get to Glacier National Park before going to the Sun Road closes. They say it's one of the most beautiful drives, but it closed the second week of October, the second or third Monday of October. So I'm going through Yellowstone, finish up my Yellowstone trip, and it's about a 6-hour drive. And we were expecting precipitation that day. I kept checking the national parks website to see if the road was open. It's open. I get about 2 hours outside of Glacier, and they close the road. So I kind of planned this trip. One of my old clients, this guy Steve, hit me up and he's like, me and my wife, actually, we moved up here in 2021. We got this farm. We just had 2 little babies. I'm about 35, 40 minutes outside of Glacier. It's kind of like the big town outside of it. We would love for you to swing by and say hi. And he's like, if you want to park your van on our property for a few nights, you're more than welcome to, save some money. And I'm like, I just kind of wanted this, solo journey. And I was like, you know what? It's a place I can park my van for a few nights. So I drove up to Glacier and I did a little exploring, like as soon as I got up there, and hit him up and ended up meeting up with his family. So I spent a few days there, and I would just travel from his place back and forth into the national park and got some hikes in. During that time, my van had a couple things break down. I had a water pump that died, and my radiant floor heating stopped working. So my time in Montana got delayed a little more. And Steve, just one of the most intelligent and well-rounded people I've ever come across. Like, here's a dude who is just like, you ask him about any topic, he can just spew forever. An amazing businessman, but a farmer, a mechanic, like does everything. Just a phenomenal human and a phenomenal person too. So the plan was I wanted to go from Glacier to Mount Rainier. Well, Mount Rainier was already covered in snow. So a lot of the things I wanted to do, I couldn't get to anyway. So I wasn't really in a rush. So I'd spent about 4 or 5 days just kind of being local, kind of going to Glacier National Park. And so I set up a trip to go on the east side of Glacier. So I was on the west side already, and going to the Sun Road cuts from east to west, but you can go all the way around and visit the backside. So I took this trip. I was on a 4-day trip going around the backside of Glacier. On the last day, me and Francis had just finished up a 12-hour, it was about a 12-hour hike. And that morning when I was getting ready on the hike, I had this eerie feeling through my body, like something's going to happen. And my thought was, I'm in grizzly country. I thought I was going to come across a grizzly bear. So that was kind of an overwhelming heaviness to the beginning of that hike. Right at the start of the hike, we're about 3 miles in, and it's this narrow little path right next to a lake, deeply wooded area to the other side. And there's a moose right there on the water's edge. And I'm like, all right, what do I do now? Do I turn around? Do I try to wait it out? I'm like, I don't want to not do this hike. So I wait like 20 minutes or so. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go. So I start slowly walking towards this moose, which please don't ever do this. Please don't ever do this. The dumbest idea. They're violent fucking animals. Francis is the best in the world. He's off leash. He's never on leash. And we would walk, and every time we get close and the moose would pick his head up, we would just stop, be in silence and just chill. And the moose would go down and start grazing again, and we get closer and closer. We literally passed within like 10 feet of this moose. And Francis didn't make a peep, nothing. Every time I would slow down, he would stop, and we get through. And I'm like, all right, maybe that was the experience. Once we get up to the peak of the mountain, there was some significant snow up there. And we had to go through this one pass where it was like thigh-high deep snow, but on like a 45-degree cliff off the edge. So I tell Francis to stay. I was like, let me, and people ask like, why don't you have him on a leash? Well, especially in situations like that, like if he's on a leash and like he pulls one way, he's going to pull me off balance or vice versa. So it's better, not having him tethered to me. Well, I make the pass through and I call for him to come. Well, he loves snow. And as soon as his feet hit that deep snow, he just starts gallivanting towards me. But we had some major wind gusts, like 80, 90 mile an hour winds. And a wind gust fucking got him and tumbled him over. And he starts rolling off the edge of this cliff, like was within 4 feet of the edge. And I'm like trying to run and gather onto him. Finally, he stops and I was able to get a hold of his collar, and I let go and he starts walking towards me, and then he starts shaking off. And as soon as he shakes off, another huge wind gust hits and he falls even closer. Somehow he didn't fall off, but that scared the living shit out of me. And so I'm like, all right, maybe that was just a warning. Maybe that's what that eerie feeling was. We finished the hike, get back. It was a really cloudy day, and hop in the van, start heading back towards the campground I was going to spend the night at. It's pitch black out. I'm 1.2 miles away from where I was staying. I reach down to grab my water bottle. I look up, and there's this black figure at the front of my van, and just smash. Have no idea what the hell I just hit. I'm doing like 60 miles an hour. It's a 70 mile an hour speed limit zone, but I'm only doing like 60 because it was so dark out. Somehow Francis got saved. So he was up on the passenger seat. I have his bed up there, and in the impact, his bed like slid up on the dashboard. So he hit into the bed itself, into the dashboard, and like bounced off. And I jammed my knee pretty hard into the steering wheel, and kind of jolted my shoulders and everything hanging onto the steering wheel. Somehow my airbags didn't go off, which was a blessing because it would have killed Francis. So immediately it's like, okay, what the fuck was that? What just happened? First thought is like, all right, assess the damage inside. Is there any fires? Like, what's going on? Is he okay? What did I just hit? Is it alive? So I go grab my gun, jump out, and this cow is, I didn't know what it was. It was this black figure like way down the road. So I start walking down there, get there, cow's dead. Call my buddy Steve, and I'm like, hey, this just happened. I guess I have to step my Starlink up. Call 911, call Steve. And Steve was like, hey, just, have the van towed to my house and we'll figure everything out. The sheriff's department shows up, and he kind of walks over, make sure I'm okay. And he explains to me that I'm on Indian reservation and they have open range. So that means cows can walk back across this fucking 70 mile an hour, 2-lane highway in the middle of Montana. And he's pissed because he's shown up to incidents where people have died, like a little Toyota Camry, and you hit a fucking cow doing 65, 70 miles an hour and it's killed people. And he just thinks it's the most ridiculous thing. But also on Indian reservation, when you hit a cow, you have to pay for the cow. And he's like, listen, I'll go to court for you and I'll say that it was pitch black and you were going under the speed limit and it's out of your hands. So he's like, I'll call some tow trucks. We spent hours trying to get a hold of tow trucks. It is opening night of hunting season in Montana. So nobody's there, no tow trucks. So they pushed me off the side of the road and I had to stay there for 3 nights until I can get a tow truck to tow me back to my buddy Steve's. And that is the perfect ending of this journey in my life. This story ends today, but yours is still waiting to be told. You're not alone in this walk in life. If this hits you, share it with someone that needs it. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Find me at Brad B. Rowe at Instagram. And if you're ready to step into the front row of your life, whether it be the fellowship, the foundry, coaching, or support the ministry, you can find it all at frontrow.co. I'll see you next week.